Welcome to the notes on solving third degree or higher equations by factoring. So what is a third degree or higher equation? Let's just remind ourselves, that's when you have x to the third, all right, something like this, plus x squared plus x plus some constant, we'll just call it 4, and let's say that equals 0. All right, so again, third degree or higher. You might have x to the fourth, but instead of a quadratic where it's just x squared, it will be x to the third. Here's our zero factor theorems again. Super important again to this lesson. Now here it just says if a and b equals is 0, if a or times b equals 0, then a or b equals 0. But that's true if you have even the three values. If a times b times c equals 0, then a, b, or c one of those has to be 0. Okay, it doesn't matter how many you multiply. One of them has to be 0. So in this lesson, we're going to have three numbers. So this again holds true whether it's factors or and just a constant, or if it's just two factors, set them equal to 0. If it's equal to 0, one of them has to be 0. So finally, here are those steps. Now it says quadratic here. We can cross that out, all right, because it's third degree or higher, but it's the same steps. Okay. Step 1, write the equation so that one side of the equation equals 0. All right, it has to equal 0. Now it says factor, though we don't need the word quadratic, but we're gonna factor the expression. Then we're going to set each factor containing a variable equal to 0, and then we're going to solve. So same steps, just like I said, it's going to be third degree or higher. So let's take a look at some examples, and that'll be it. So all right, so it's set equal to 0. Awesome. All right, now we got a factor. What's the first step when we factor? GCF first. So I'm going to rewrite this by taking out a GCF. The GCF is 3x. Okay, so when I take out a factor out of 3x from 3x cubed, I'm left with an x squared. I have the minus sign. I factored out a 3 from 12, so I have a 4, and I factored out that x, so that won't be on the inside anymore. And then that will equal 0. So I got to make sure. So I factored out a GCF. Now what am I left with? I'm left with this x squared minus 4. I can break that apart. So when I rewrite this, I'm going to have my 3x here. And then this x squared minus 4, that is a difference of perfect squares. So it's going to be x plus 2, x minus 2, and then all of that will equals 0. So I'm multiplying these three, this times this equals 0. Well, then one of them has to be 0. So this is where we set each equal to 0 and solve for x. So we're going to say 3x equals 0. We're going to say x plus 2 equals 0. And we're going to say x minus 2 equals 0. And then we're just going to solve for our x. Well, 3 times x, well, if you didn't know, 3 times x equals 0. Well, 3 is not 0, so x has to be 0. But if you weren't sure, divide each side by 3. So there, x equals 0. Here, subtract by 2 from each side. 0 minus 2 is x equals negative 2. And then this side, add 2. Add 2. So x equals positive 2. So there are my answers. X equals 0, negative 2, and 2. Let's take a look at two more examples. All right, this example. All right, so it's set equal to 0. Step 1, check, perfect. Now we got to look to factors. This one already is, so now I've got to look here. All right, can I factor this? All right, so look at GCF. 2 doesn't go into 15 and 18. So I've got to use tic-tac-toe to factor that trinomial. So let's do that kind of on the side here. All right, so I'm going to have my 2x squared. I'm going to have my 18. All right, 2x squared times 18 is 36x squared. So now I have to ask myself, what multiplies to 36x squared, but it adds to positive 15x? Well, 36, I'm going to try 12 and 3. 12x and 3x, yep, that multiplies to 36, adds to 15. So now 2x is 2x and 1x. 2x times 6 is 12x, 1x times 3. So here are my factors right here. So now when I rewrite this, I'm going to have my 5x minus 1. And then this middle section breaks down into these two factors, and that equals 0. So it's going to be 2x plus 3, and it's going to be 1x, and I don't need the 1 there, x plus 6 equals 0. Set each term equal to 0 and solve. So I'm going to say 5x minus 1 equals 0. 2x plus 3 equals 0. And x plus 6 equals 0. So then when you solve those, pretty straightforward. Subtract 6. I think you guys get this part, x equals 0. Here I got to subtract the 3. So 2x equals negative 3, and then I divide by 2. So x equals negative 3 halves. And then over here I'm going to add 1. 5x equals 1. Divide by 5. So x equals 1 divided by 5. So there are my three answers right there. Final example, it's set equal to 0. That's awesome. So now we got to look to factor. How do we factor? Look to GCF first. So when I take out a G, I got a 2. 2 goes into 4 and 30, and they all have an x. So I can take out a 2x. When I rewrite, I'll have x squared, all right, minus 2x, minus 15. And then that equals 0. Again, now we factor this right here. It's a trinomial, but the leading coefficient is 1, so I don't need to do tic-tac-toe. I just have to ask myself, what multiplies x times x gives me x squared? What multiplies to negative 15 here that adds up to negative 2? What multiplies to a negative, it's got to be plus minus. And if it goes to negative 2, it's going to be plus 5. All right, minus 3. All right, so there are our factors. Set each of those factors then equal to 0, and solve is the final step. I think you guys know how to do that at this point. So there you have the three types of problems that you're going to see when you're solving third degree or higher equations.